was changed at that time from heavy industrial M2 to R2. From 1979 to 1993, it was R2. From 1993 to 2011, it was development residential DR. And then from 2011 to the present, it was urbanized residential. So since 1979, it has been residentially zoned property. So the proper time to make the mistake argument would have been in 1979 when it went from heavy industrial to residentially zoned.
Right, and I agree that it's a grievance that we are not notifying people when their parcels are being changed. But we need to get them in here and allow them the opportunity to respond. So that's just.
Okay, Mr. President, this is a perfect segue because I would like to bring up and move that we notify all the property owners in Tier 4 that we are considering putting them into a Tier 4. And so unless someone else has a better number, I would like to notify all property owners that have at least 20 acres that are in the proposed Tier 4 map. And I'd like to send that notice out immediately so that people are aware that we are adopting a proposed tier map, and they can come and understand what's going on, and they can agree or disagree to be included.
Yeah, I talked to Director Central at lunch today because we knew this was going to come up today because we had our discussion this morning. So Director Central, I'll let you weigh in on that.
We have approximately 1,200 individuals who would meet that criteria presently, who would need to be notified. That's something that we can't send letters to if the board determines that is the course of action you would like to take. We have the addresses.
And I don't think we need to take a vote, but if we have a consensus, and that's kind of where we've been heading all along, we just take a consensus that that's okay to move forward with the 20 acres and above, and send a letter out of the tier mapping.
What, the 1,200 is property owners with 20 acres or more?
20 acres or more that are shown in on the draft map 4 as being within tier 4, proposed tier 4.
And why was that 20 acre minimum used as a criteria?
That is the minimum you would need in the NAR to do a major subdivision. And if the map is adopted in its present form with the area shown as tier 4, that would preclude individuals from doing major subdivisions from that point forward.
So is everybody okay with the consensus?
Yeah.
20 acres above? Okay, that's fine. We'll just go ahead and charge the department with the letter, and now that we've identified those parcels, and we'll just go ahead.
Can we also include the fact sheet?
Yes.
I would like to see a draft of the letter because I think there's an opportunity that we can empower the people on what they can do, not just giving them the facts. We can also let them know certain legislatures to notify and you know, just give them things that they can do. Come to our commissioner meetings, let their voices be heard.
You mean how they can correspond with the community or with the government or the commissioners in terms of email, letters, and public hearings?
Yeah,
Sure.
we need to be
Yes,
responsible.
we can give them actions that they can take if they have an opinion on the matter.
Eric, sounds like your department just draft a letter, email it out to the board.
Certainly.
Get the okay, and folks can go ahead and send that out. Okay. We'll move along with the historic property tax credit. Isaac England has.
Mr. President, members of the board, you will recall that Jim Carruthers submitted the request for a property tax credit for renovation and restoration costs associated with the work done to the Isaac England House that was recently designated by the board as a historic site in Cecil County. The Historic District Commission reviewed Mr. Carruthers' documentation that was submitted and found that it was justifiable and submitted a recommendation to the board and county commissioners that a tax credit be granted in the amount of $212.81, which is 10% of Mr. Carruthers' costs against his property taxes. This credit is allowable under Article 3 of Chapter 258 of the Code of Cecil County, which establishes the historic property tax credit. It is, as I said, it has been reviewed by the Historic District Commission, and it is in for your action this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, sir. Members of the board, we have the historic property tax credit for the Isaac England House, and with that, we'll entertain a motion for a decision on that tax credit.
Move for approval?
All right, we have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Wong.
Mr. President, members of the board, also for your consideration today is an amendment to the management services agreement between the board and Aramark Management Services Limited Partnership. The term of the agreement will continue through December 14, 2015, unless otherwise terminated pursuant to the agreement. And as you may recall, the amendment primarily reflects the addition of the board's detention center.
Sir. Thank you. Members of the board, will entertain a motion for contract adoption between the Board of County Commissioners and Aramark Management Services LP.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the contract between the Board of Commissioners and Aramark to increase the service provided by Aramark to the Correction Center.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Director Flanagan.
Mr. President, members of the board, there are 8 DPW-related items on your agenda for action this afternoon. The first of which is an easement agreement by and between Craft Haven Marina and Campgrounds Incorporated and the Board of County Commissioners of Cecil County for granting to the county a utility easement for a county sewer line that traverses land owned by Craft Haven Marina and Campgrounds Incorporated. As I reported to you at this morning's work session, that sewer line was installed as part of the county's wastewater CIP project to extend public sewer service in the Carpenter's Point area. This easement agreement was introduced at your July 17th meeting for a vote today, and my recommendation is that you approve and accept this easement agreement as presented.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, you heard Director Flanagan read the background of the easement agreement between Craft Haven Marina Campground Incorporated and Board of County Commissioners for a permanent utility easement. Entertain a motion on the recommendation of Director Flanagan to accept that permanent utility easement.
So moved?
We have a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The second action item this afternoon is an option contract between Harold E. Barker and the Board of County Commissioners for the acquisition of right-of-way, as well as a temporary construction easement needed for the replacement of County Bridge CE 0043, which carried Weibel Road over Nesbit Run. This option contract was also introduced at your July 17th meeting for a vote today, and my recommendation is that you approve and accept the option contract as presented.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, you heard Director Flanagan read the background of the option contract between the Board of County Commissioners and Harold E. Barker at 403 Dr. Jack Road, Port Deposit, for conveyance of property for the replacement of the Weibel Ridge Road over Nesbit Run. Recommendation from Department of Public Works is for approval, and we'll entertain a motion to accept this option contract.
So moved.
Motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The third action item this afternoon is another option contract. This one is between SRP Group LLC and the Board of County Commissioners for the acquisition of right-of-way, as well as a temporary construction easement needed for the replacement of County Bridge CE 0097, which carries Barron Road over the CSX rail line. This option contract was also introduced at your July 17th meeting for a vote today, and my recommendation is that you approve and accept the option contract as presented.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, on the recommendation of approval from Director Flanagan, will entertain a motion to accept the option contract between the Board of County Commissioners and SRP Group LLC for Northeast Road, map 25, parcel 728, lot 6, for conveyance of property for the replacement of Barron Road Bridge.
I have a question. I noticed that on the option contract for Mr. Parker, on Dr. Jack Road. It's $5,800 assumed per acre. And on this one, it's $120,000 per acre. Could you tell me the difference for the
Residential versus industrial. We have appraisals done on both, and in the case of the SRP group, that is industrial zone land.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll entertain a motion for this option contract. So, motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The fourth action item this afternoon is a permanent utility easement agreement by and between CNS Property LLC and the Board of County Commissioners to grant to the county a permanent utility easement for a county sewer line which traverses land owned by CNS Property LLC. As I noted at this morning's work session, that county sewer line was installed some years ago, but our research revealed that an easement agreement was never properly recorded, and we're moving to fix that. This easement agreement was also introduced at your July 17th meeting for a vote today, and my recommendation is the board approve the easement agreement as presented.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, you heard Director Flanagan read the background for the permanent utility easement between C&S Property LLC and the Board of County Commissioners for the maintenance of sanitary sewer lines. His recommendation is for approval, and we'll entertain a motion for that permanent utility easement.
So moved.
Motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. The fifth action item this afternoon is a pair of utility easement agreements, both of which are by and between Peninsula Industrial Park Incorporated and the Board of County Commissioners to grant to the county a permanent utility easement for an existing county sewer line, which traverses land owned by Peninsula Industrial Park Incorporated. It too was introduced at your July 17th meeting for a vote today, and my recommendation is also that you approve and accept both of these easement agreements as well.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, you heard Director Flanagan read the background and his recommendation for approval for two permanent utility easements between Peninsula Industrial Park Incorporated and the Board of County Commissioners for the maintenance of sanitary sewer lines. Entertain a motion on his recommendation for approval.
So moved.
Motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. The sixth action item this afternoon is yet another permanent utility easement agreement pertaining to that same county sewer line. This one is by and between the town of Northeast and the Board of County Commissioners. It too was introduced at your July 17th meeting for a vote today. My recommendation is also that you approve the easement agreement as presented.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, you heard Director Flanagan read the background and his recommendation for the permanent utilities. For the permanent utility easement between the town of Northeast and the Board of County Commissioners for the maintenance of sanitary sewer lines, his recommendation is for approval, and we'll entertain a motion on that recommendation.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval. We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. The seventh action item this afternoon is a contract award. This one is for bid 13-10 for asphalt overlay of portions of Rock Run Road and Hanses Point Road. The work under this contract will be funded through the Roads Division's FY13 operating budget. The county purchasing agent opened bids for this procurement on August 15th of this year with 5 bids received. American Infrastructure was the apparent low bidder. We've reviewed their bid, found that it meets all the requirements and specifications, and so my recommendation to the board this afternoon is that you award bid 13-10 for asphalt overlay to American Infrastructure in the amount of $564,638.76.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, you heard Director Flanagan read the background and his recommendation for approval for bid 13-10 asphalt overlay to Rock Run Road and Hanses Point Road. And with that, we'll entertain a motion. His recommendation for approval to award that bid.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve bid number 13-10 asphalt overlay to American Infrastructure in the amount of $564,638.76.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a motion for approval. second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. The eighth and final action item this afternoon is another contract award. This one is for the purchase of various chemicals for use by the wastewater division of the Department of Public Works in the operation of the county's various wastewater treatment plants, as well as the various water treatment plants which we operate on behalf of the Cecil County Public Schools. The chemical purchases under this contract will be funded through wastewater division's fiscal year 13 operating budget. The county purchasing agent opened bids for this procurement on July 3rd of this year, with 11 vendors submitting proposals for various chemicals as spelled out on the bid tabulation sheet, which I believe you have as part of your read-ahead packet. We've reviewed those proposals and have identified the vendors that offer the lowest cost for each of those chemicals. And so my recommendation to the board is that you award contracts to Usalco, Coin Chemical, Greer Lime, Siemens Industries, Atlantic Coast Polymer, Univar, and F2 Industries for purchase of the listed chemicals at the prices indicated in their respective bids.
Okay. You're going to make me pronounce all those names.
No, sir, my suggestion would be the motion is to award the chemicals as enumerated by the Director of Public Works.
So moved.
Thank you, well, just as long as we're in concert.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. A few budget amendments for your review this afternoon. The first item is for law enforcement to establish an initial FY 2013 school bus safety enforcement budget in the amount of $15,000. Second item is to appropriate a budget of $200,000 for chargeback of sewer and landfill fees effective July 1. Wastewater will be charging solid waste for sewer usage for leachate, and solid waste will be charging wastewater for sludge disposal. And this is an accounting technical mechanism. Next item, capital improvement programs, is closing and canceling previously adopted and remaining projects known as Western Water Trunk Line, Far Creek Mitigation, Flood Mitigation, County Office Building, which was 107 North Street, an aging study, and Conowingo Park, an initial phase, remainder funds actually increasing some expenses. Sum total of this transaction will be to transfer funds to cover a portion of fiscal 13 PAYGO funds, reduces our operating transfer needed for fiscal 13 in the amount of $104,213.23. Next item, also capital improvement program associated with roads and bridges, transfers funds from completed or canceled projects to active projects. This proposes to close the projects of the traffic barrier at Macaulay Road, the Booth Road Bridge, Lums Road upgrades, and Jackson Station Culvert, and transfer those remainder funds to Stemmers Run, Culvert, and Racine School Road improvements. Next item, domestic violence. To appropriate a budget for the fiscal 13 domestic violence crisis and support services grant awarded to Social Services Domestic Violence from the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention in the amount of $16,740. Also to correct the other grant in the amount of approximately $94,000. Next grant is to appropriate a budget for the fiscal 13 rape crisis intervention, federal and state portions. The grant was not awarded in time to be properly included in the fiscal 13 budget. Next item, circuit court, to correct the budget for the fiscal 13 drug court grant to reduce the amount to the actual grant award. Next item, similar. Also, this is to appropriate a budget for the state's attorney's office grant award that you're aware of to fund the victim's witness coordinator's position in the amount of $35,000. Next item, community transit, allocating and reallocating expenses for the fiscal 13 JARC grant program in the amount of $33,200 from vehicle maintenance to professional services. Next item, also this is a technical correction for community transit. It's accurately recognizing grant revenue from WMAPCO for acquisition of a routing system program for demand response routes and for installation of a passenger information system that was previously adopted. This more accurately reflects the budget. Next item, in reference to the Aramark contract mentioned earlier, this will reclassify funding in the amount of $59,800 from law enforcement and law enforcement related functions to accommodate the increase in the facilities management contract to pick up the additional square footage in the detention center. Next item is to appropriate an initial budget of $48,000 for a recently executed contract to provide additional patrols in Port Deposit. This is to reflect revenue coming in from Port Deposit and the expense associated with the program. Next item is to establish a fiscal 13 budget for the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention SOCAM grant for law enforcement in the amount of $21,620. Last item is to carry forward the balance of unused fiscal 12 video lottery terminal local community grant funds to be used in fiscal 13 in the amount of $27,532, which reflects funding returned by the town of Port Deposit and underutilized by Haven House. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Whiteford, members of the board will entertain a motion to accept the budget amendments as read by Mr. Whiteford.
So moved.
Motion for approval? We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn today's meeting. The next meeting is September 4th at 7 p.m. right here in this building and in this room.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor? Yes,
Please
ma'am.
excuse me because I must have put my name on the wrong list. I know I did put it down with my address, and I would like to address you.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Joan Farrick. I live at 101 Caldwell Road, Northeast Maryland. And this is regarding the petition for the rebuilding of the old Elk Neck Bridge that I want to just mention to you. The one between Northeast and Elkton, Maryland. And the purpose of addressing you today is to submit a petition of 566 names and addresses which were collected during the past 3 months for the rebuilding of the old Elk Neck Road Bridge and access roads between Northeast and Elkton, Maryland. The bridge has been down, as you know, for the past 8 years. Presently, Route 272, Turkey Point Road, is the only evacuation route for hundreds of people to be able to evacuate from its furthest end, from Chesapeake Isle to Turkey Point Lighthouse area to Hart's Church, Hart's United Methodist Church. Evacuations could include, but not to be limited to, the following: fire hazards, flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, downed trees, and medical emergencies. Many thanks go to the Department of Public Works Director Scott Flanagan for recognizing the need to rebuild this bridge for the safety of the residents of Turkey Point and the many specialized camps and campground guests, adults and children, who arrive there on a weekly basis throughout the year. Presently, if a problem should arise that requires evacuation of the southern end of Turkey Point, there would be approximately 4,000 to 5,000 people on Route 272 with only one way out. I am submitting documentation in regards to this in more detail, along with the petition. I would also like to thank all the commissioners for their concerns and for their consideration in regards to rebuilding the bridge. This bridge is an age-old route that must be reinstated for the safety of the community and visitors who would once again be able to use it. It provides much-needed access to the area. In summary, this is not a luxury, rather it's a necessity. I thank you very much. Joan Farrick.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to see, there's a dirigible flying in the air over here. When was the last time you saw one of them?
No tractor.
No, no traffic.
Is that the Sentinel 236?
It's either, the correct term is